Okay. They're coming. I know we're coming in from recess.
Hold up, what you eat, man? Cheetos.
I know. We'll call to order the Douglasville City Council Legislative Work Session for tonight, which is Thursday, May the 30th, 2024. Our invocation has already been done by our esteemed Police Chief, Dr. Gary Sparks, at our 5:30 meeting and the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll move on to announcements and presentations, and then we'll get into the meat of the meeting. My name is Rochelle Robinson. I'm the mayor of the city of Douglasville. I'd like to welcome you to the Douglasville City Council Legislative Work Session. I'll call this meeting to order. And this is a work session where agenda items are presented for discussion only, and no official action will be taken on these items tonight. Official action will be taken next Monday, and I think that date is 3rd of June. If the business you're here for is not listed as an agenda item, there will be ample time under the agenda item comments from citizens and delegates for you to discuss your business. I'll go over a few protocol items, and then we'll get into the meeting. I ask that you please keep your comments and presentations on a professional level, dealing with the facts that are important for this governing body to make our decisions. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be of a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. We ask you not to call out names and point to groups of people. Just have your comments directed to the chair. If you deviate from this requirement, a second deviation will result in a request for you to leave the council chambers this evening. Only one person speaking at a time. Please do not applaud or react to speakers. Speak from the audience or carry on a conversation with anyone in the audience when you're at the podium. When you're at the podium, please address all of your concerns, comments, and issues to the committee chairperson, and we will respond in kind. We're only required to accept public comments during the required public hearings. And if you have a cell phone or electronic device, we ask that you'll please put those in silent mode or turn those off until after the meeting so they will not be disruptive. Now, this is how the meeting agenda items will be handled this evening. The committee chairperson will read the agenda item. Then that person or applicant making their presentation will come forward. Myself and council members will probably ask clarifying questions to help us get a better understanding of the item that you're presenting. After that, the committee chairperson will ask for comments or statements from the audience in a public hearing for 20 minutes for those in favor of the item and 20 minutes for those in opposition, and each person has 5 minutes to speak. Prior to coming to the podium, we ask that you please fill out a speaker card. They're outside on the desk. They're blue cards. You can put your name and address for the record, hand that to the city clerk, Ms. Vicki Acker to my right, and then you come to the podium and give us your name and address and begin to give us your information. This meeting is not a question and answer format. It's just, or debate. We're here to hear the information, deliberate, and make our decision next week. If you have printed material, please hand that to our city clerk. Ms. Vicki will make copies and hand those out to myself and council members. And that is it. I hope that we have gone through all of the protocol for the meeting. The committee meetings, this special call meeting, not special call meeting, I'm sorry, it's a legislative work session. We had special call meeting earlier, but will be handled by each committee chairperson. And then if you are a citizen who would like to address us after all of the committees have presented, there will be ample time at the end of the meeting for comments from citizens and delegates for you to come forward and discuss your business that's germane to the city of Douglasville. That's a lot of talking and information. Hopefully we're all on the same page. Now, we will follow the agenda. There are copies outside if you'd like to have a paper agenda, and or you can follow us with the printed copy on the overhead. So now we'll move on to committees. We're at item number 5, which is Economic Development Committee. That's chaired by Mayor Pro Tem City Council Member Terry Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business under the Economic Development Committee at this time.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on then to Finance Committee, chaired by Councilmember Chris Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business tonight in finance.
Thank you so much, Coach. Housing and Community Affairs Committee, that's chaired by Councilmember Howard Estes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Housing and Community Affairs Committee has no business this evening.
Thank you, sir. Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee, that's chaired by Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Terry Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's no business under the Legislative and Governmental Committee at this time.
Thank you, sir. We're at item number 9, Personnel and Organization Committee, chaired by Councilmember Howard Estes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Personnel and Organization Committee has no business this evening either.
Thank you so much, Councilman Estes. We do have business under Planning and Development Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Nicole Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am, we do have a couple of items this evening. And the first item is a public hearing. So first, we need to remove from the table, tabled item from May 20th, 2024, and that is to hold a public hearing and consider a request to amend Exhibit C of Ordinance 2021-56 to amend Condition 14 regarding camera systems throughout the community to require instead vehicular tag reader system to be installed at the entrance to the development for 13.83 acres on Van Sant Road and Land Lot 902, District 18, Section 2, Parcel ID 0902-182-0018, application by Starlight Homes. And Ms. Marissa Jackson is down here to discuss this item with us.
Hello, Marissa Jackson, Planning and Zoning Administrator, 6695 Church Street. You will recall that this item was previously came before you and it was tabled. As a refresher, this site was rezoned for up to 124 townhomes in 2021. One of the conditions required cameras throughout the community. The applicant approached staff for clarity on what the condition would entail and what would be acceptable to satisfy that condition. Staff had some discussion with the applicant, the police department, the legal team, to try and develop verbiage that would satisfy this condition, which is before you today.
Thank you so much for that. Council, I know that we had spoken about this item. If you guys recall, it's probably been about, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. Brought it up a little bit here and there. It is the same information that we spoke about at that time, and I know it's kind of a conundrum, if you will, because we're looking at wanting to keep the residents safe, but at the same time not encroaching on their privacy. So with that being said, Council, do you guys have questions or comments regarding this item? No? Okay. Before we open the public hearing, is the applicant here, and would they like to speak to this item? Would you guys like to speak to this item? Yeah. Well, if you'll come on down and just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Joe Ingram. I'm with Starlight Homes. We do business at 3820 Mansell Road, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30022. I thought it'd be beneficial for us tonight to bring actual HOA attorney with us to hopefully give you some information just on the potential legal implications as it relates to a homeowners association, as it relates to a true camera system installed throughout the development. So I've got Ben Ost with me this evening. He's not a land use attorney. Again, he specializes in HOA work, but I had just asked him to come to present some information to you guys to consider.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Ben Ost. I'm a partner with the law firm Duro & Duro. We operate at 160 Claremont Avenue, Decatur, Georgia, 30030. Our firm specializes in the representation of community and condominium associations. I've been in this practice for 15 years. The firm has been in this specialty for about 30 years, and at any given time, we have between 400 and 500 community association clients that we represent. In this case, we are representing Chestnut Grove Community Association Incorporated, which is the entity that is being developed that will govern the association that Joe and Ashton are in development with currently. I understand that a formal reservation of rights has been entered into the record on this issue, and I won't speak to the land use elements of this or the zoning elements of this. As Joe said, My scope is to cover the liability that can accrue to an association and its members when a security system is installed in a community. And from the outset, common sense dictates that a security system is great for a community, right? It provides cameras and allows the association to liaise with local law enforcement in the hope of preventing or at least treating crime as it occurs. However, because of the nature of associations, it can often be a double-edged sword that incurs more liability for the members than the good that it can do. Associations, as a refresher, are nonprofit corporations under Georgia law, and they are headed by volunteer boards of directors. And these volunteers are just everyday people who have donated their time to lead the community for the good of their neighbors and themselves, upkeep property values, and things of that nature. They are often not experienced in governance of nonprofit corporations, and many times have never been in charge of an association before. Because of this, Georgia law affords them special protection that isn't applied to commercial property managers or professionals in this field. They have a lower threshold that they have to adhere to because they are volunteers. They're doing the best that they can with limited non-professional information at their disposal. So, typically speaking, under Georgia law, a board and an association are protected from liability and have no liability to protect the security or the safety of its members. This is intentional. Again, these are volunteers. They are not a police force. They don't have the wherewithal or the knowledge to enforce what in essence would be criminal activity or to attempt to keep the members of their community and the occupants of their community safe. There is an exception to that rule, and that is when an association undertakes an action that its members or occupants could reasonably believe is meant to keep them safe or secure. Once an association takes that affirmative step, they lose that shield under Georgia law. They become liable to continue taking that step in a non-negligent way. So when it comes to security cameras, consider two different associations. Association A does not have a security system. A crime occurs in the community. A person is injured or property is damaged. That person has no standing to sue the association for failure to keep them safe. They are protected, the board and the association, and therefore its members, are protected from Georgia law, by Georgia law, from being held liable for the damage that could have occurred because of that crime. Association B has a security system. And let's say they only inspect that security system once a quarter. They don't regularly monitor the video feed. They don't check the cameras on a regular basis because they just don't see the need to do so. It's a quiet community. Nothing ever happens. It's the same old story. Well, a camera goes out, and they don't know about it. It's out for several weeks. And unfortunately, it's in an area that covers a dimly lit hallway. In that hallway, a crime is committed. Somebody is injured. Property is damaged. That person finds out when they ask for the footage from that night, or when the police ask for the footage from that night, they find out the camera was not working. They say, well, I would never have walked down that dim hallway but for the fact that I thought I was being monitored and protected by the camera. At that point, the association gets sued. Now, there may not be liability because there's a doctrine called the third-party criminal action that protects an association in some cases from liability, but it's the act of filing the suit itself that does the harm. Once a suit is filed against an association, two things typically happen. One, they call me or scramble to find an attorney, and two, they file a claim with their insurance provider to help them defend against that claim. Lawsuits are expensive. We all know this. Attorneys are unfortunately expensive. Claims of this nature to defend can be tens of thousands of dollars very easily, especially if you have an aggressive plaintiff's attorney on the other side. Association insurance is difficult to procure right now. Premiums are going up. Risk is being reassessed. So we have associations that are getting dropped all the time from their carriers. A series of claims, or even one claim of this nature against their policy, can result in significantly increased premiums, and it can even result in the loss of coverage. And as you probably are aware, associations' sole source of funding are the assessments paid by the members. They're not making money off of anything. They are assessing every owner an equal share of the cost for the community. So once that lawsuit is filed, even before you get to thinking about whether a judgment is issued against the association, there are a series of actions that take place that increase the cost to every member. And if the insurance carrier drops them from coverage, and ends up not being able to procure additional coverage, then you have a loss of property value because potential purchasers during their due diligence will find out that the association is underinsured and underfunded. And these factors combined to result in a situation where each member is harmed simply because the association took an additional step to provide security and because they were volunteers was unable to do that in a non-negligent way. So that's why the request from the association for the sake of its future members would be to, instead of security cameras throughout, be to install a flock system at the entry or exit, which doesn't create the same liability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, did you guys have any questions or comments, Madam Mayor?
I did. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you for the explanation. It really does help. And so, just for my basic knowledge, just rudimentary. So you're saying as long as the flock cameras are outside in the entrance and exits, that the volunteer board will not be liable if something were to happen. But it does provide some security, and if it were to come beyond that border point of entry and exit, that then you will become liable if something were to happen to one of your residents.
That's exactly correct. The nature of a flock or flock-style system is that it is really only capturing license plates and maintaining
Okay.
license plates. So it's not really reasonable for a member to believe that a system installed at the entrance is going to keep them personally safe within the
Okay.
community, because they're not covered. And we send out very detailed letters to members when these flock systems are installed, saying, hey, this is to liaise with police. They get this footage, nobody else does. This
Okay.
is not going to keep you personally safe within the community, but it's hopeful that it will deter crime and allow people to be tracked if they come in without purpose in the community.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, thank you. Coach, did you have a question?
And I'm sure at some point, Chief will weigh in, but the flock cameras or the tag readers, there is value to those because y'all get notification if something you're looking for shows up.
And that's the word, something we're looking for. If that tag is not associated with any criminal activity within the metro area, if it's not on a hot list, it's not gonna tell you anything. And the flock camera is not what we see. And once they see the flock cameras out there, it's gonna deter people from jumping over the fence or walking in, doing enter and out of assaults, burglaries. Because you have to look at the criminal element these days. They see those cameras not hidden. And, you know, that's my whole deal with this is, I know he got the A and the B and the, he mentioned the word however, but, he's an attorney, he could talk to our attorney. But my viewpoint on this is that we done had assaults, burglaries, in and out of with people walking into these complexes. Or they drive a clean car. See, we got to think 21st century criminality. And how we gonna, because a lot of times when they come in here and they build these places and then they sell it, they gone. Now we left with all these crimes happening, drugs being sold behind these buildings. We have some apartment complexes that have cameras because they want to keep their people safe. And that's just where I'm coming from. Wherever it lands, I'm gonna do my job. But it's a system that that go in concert with the flock camera. See, the flock camera is one thing. Then you got a system that overlaying. So we're talking about an overlaying system.
Just
That
one,
when-
go
okay,
ahead. I'm sorry, Chief, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we done had assaults with people going to take out the trash, and people get assaulted. That flock camera ain't gonna help you.
So,
if the criminal live inside the complex.
right.
Just one last question, and I'll pass the baton here. In your example, the liability exists because the camera went out and they were unaware of it. But that's where the liability comes in. If the cameras are all working, something still happens, there's no liability involved in that, correct? It's just if something happens to camera and they don't notice it, and there's okay. I was.
Yes, sir, there's still a camera, security systems tend to be a litigation magnet just generally because plaintiffs' attorneys are looking for issues to sue, deep pockets. The association tends to be the deep pocket. The liability certainly stems from the camera going out, the association not maintaining it, and then a claim that they negligently didn't maintain it. What we have practically seen is that a community with a system in place is more likely to be sued. Plaintiffs' attorneys tend to send that initial letter, file that suit, and then they see if they've got a case through the discovery throughout the lawsuit, which is the expensive part. So there's a bit of added concern with the system, even if they've been non-negligently maintaining it. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer. I
Yeah,
apologize.
thank you for that. I know, and I hear you, and I think that we all do. I think for me personally, I completely understand what you're saying. But at the same time, we want to do whatever we can to keep the residents safe and the new residents of that community as well, by doing whatever we can to keep them safe, but within a legal means. So that's why I said quite the conundrum, because we understand what you're saying, but how do we balance that? I know we're embarking on some time here. Terry Miller.
Madam Chair,
Oh, I'm so sorry, Madam Mayor.
This is just a rebuttal or just an additional question. Chief, is there any way we can marry the two requests to, or for our legal to say, since they are city streets and they're public streets, we could have the city's system within the public streets and not have the company be liable? Is there any way we could do that? I mean, we do that now on city streets.
I think you're talking about two different things. You're talking about the street, and then you're talking about inside of a complex. You know, the street thing, yeah, we have flock cameras out on the streets, and,
But the
you know,
complex are on the streets. So if
well,
we
that's
have
what I'm
cameras.
saying, that, when these, all the apartments and different things we get into this city now,
Mm-hmm.
if at some point, if you don't do it now, at some point, you're gonna need some cameras inside of these apartments, the condos, or whatever word you want to use. Because that's where the crime's gonna be occurring.
Now, who's liable? Who's liable then? If the builder or the organization builds the facilities and they leave and we put the cameras in, then it becomes the city's
I understand.
responsibility, right?
That's what I'm saying. If they coming into Douglasville, we need to look at them putting them in when they come.
Right.
But if they're not,
You know,
Is
they
it
looking at
mandated by law?
They're looking at liability. I'm looking at crime.
I understand.
So we got a disconnect. I understand where they're coming from. They don't want the liability, they don't want this. But I would look at it like, I think I'll get more people to move in if I got some security.
Madam Chair, Madam Mayor, I think for the sake of the applicant, I think what we can do is, it sounds like a larger issue, so that you can deal with the matter at hand. So as it relates to public safety as a whole within apartment complexes, we can have another conversation set up to establish that, so you can deal with their matter specifically.
Yeah, their matter is they are agreeable to putting a flock camera at the entrance as a tag reader, but not beyond that, because then the liability issue becomes with their volunteer service, their volunteer board.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am, and I'm just suggesting we can deal with that matter and then the bigger issue that
Okay.
the chief
At
is
another
discussing.
Thank you, Ms.
time
Hampton.
for their
Yes,
HOA.
ma'am.
Can I make one point of clarification? Because this, and we may just be calling, it may be 6 dozen, one half dozen of the other, but these are fee simple townhomes. They're not condos, they're not apartments, there's no interior hallways, there's no interior lobby. Anything that were to get installed within this community would be installed outside. So just,
Okay. Okay, well,
Yeah,
for the sake of time, yes,
was
Mr. Miller,
gonna-
I know, if you'll keep it down to about 35 seconds for me, because we're running out of time.
you asked the impossible. I was actually going to make the point the mayor just made, which is, and the applicant, that these are all public streets, so there's not really any internal hallways or anything like that, so it's really not, that part is not relevant to this particular applicant, but the question, and you may not be able to answer this question as an attorney for the HOA, but if the city is installing the cameras, does the city have potential liability if, say, one of the flock cameras is down? Could an HOA resident sue the city if, you know, a branch blows in front of it and it's blocked or something like that? Is the city opening itself up for any potential liability?
Yes, sir. You would need to ask the city attorney.
Okay.
I mean, there
And
are extra
I will
hoops.
redirect that.
Okay.
So I think what we're looking at doing at this point, though, is to look at this particular item and then having a separate meeting where we can have this discussion later as far as what we can and cannot do, if you guys are okay with that. Okay, okay, I appreciate it. I think so, too. Okay, thank you. Thank you guys so very much. Keeping in mind that this is a public hearing, so let's please open that public hearing if we have anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this item. And as our very own Sam Davis would say, if we have no takers, I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing. And with that being said, guys, you've got a few days to think about that, and we can ask questions of legal between now and then, but let's take this up on Monday, please. Thank y'all. Thank you guys so much for bearing with us through that. And my apologies, because we have a few more items here. And our next item is item number 24-187. It says to refer to the Planning Commission a proposed ordinance to amend the UDO to allow for front and rear attached garage placement on residential structures and the R5 single-family cottage residential district. And Ms. Shayla Reed is down here to speak to us about this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Shayla Reed, Community Development Director, 6695 Church Street. The item before you is in reference to asking for clearance to move a proposed text amendment to the Planning Commission. We have a development that has brought something to our attention. R5 only allows for rear-facing garages. It does not allow for front-facing garages. And so staff is asking to take before the Planning Commission as well as council for final adoption not only rear-facing, but allowing for it to be front-facing as well. And then further reiterating the requirements for the road standards or street standards in the rear of those structures for alleyway.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Council, did you guys have questions about this item? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I know you.
I don't have a question, but are you, this was brought to us because a particular applicant is asking to not have to put the garages in the rear of the property, is that?
So I can say it was brought to our attention as a conversation. From there, we, as far as staff, has not found the necessary, we haven't seen where there has been, I guess, many desires to have the R5 use because of the driveways. And so we're trying to figure out a way that we can further enhance the R5 zoning classification by allowing the front driveway option to enhance the development, to allow for more R5 developments.
Didn't we change this from having? I thought we changed it not very long ago from not being in the rear, not in the front, to the rear, to prevent having cars
Yeah.
packed in the
I don't
front.
know if it was recent, but yeah, I think that's been our, I should say our, everybody knows my opinion on this, wanting to get the garages off the front
Yeah, I thought
streets,
we
but,
did.
I'm not terribly thrilled by the idea of changing it to give it allowing one or the other. I would say that maybe it might be worth the council considering this to be allowed as a variance or a special land use permit that you can, to do it in certain circumstances where it may not be practical to have garages in the rear sides of the development. But I don't like the idea of granting them either or.
Okay.
I don't know how everybody else feels about
If I
that.
could, Mr. Estes, do you have anything to comment on this? I know that you live in a community such as this.
Yeah, I didn't realize that this was restricted because I do live in a community where we have all of the above. And I understand the Mayor Pro Tem's issues. But I like the flexibility. I think the problem that you're looking at would be if you had all front-loading throughout a community instead of only rear-loading.
Option.
So maybe if there were some kind of stipulations where you know, the lot size had to be a certain size to qualify for the differing garage entries, which is how my neighborhood is.
I think that's kind of what I was saying, is that you
percentage.
allow for.
I think that, that would make sense, because I think it adds to the neighborhood to have the variety from the street and from the rear and everywhere. So I think it's a good thing in theory, but I do understand how it could be overdone and cause issues. So maybe if we look into it where there are ways to put stipulations on what would be required to have a front-loading garage versus a rear load or side or whatever.
Or a percentage of front load.
Maybe that would make it a little bit more palatable to everybody across the board.
If we can, I feel like Ms. Hampton has something to add to that.
Just wanted to make you all aware, and Ms. Reed can expound on this. This is just for cottages.
Okay.
For what?
Cottages.
Okay.
Cottages.
So the homes are much smaller with cottage homes. They're more.
Yes, you all were talking about specifics. This is just for cottages.
I would think those would be the ones that wouldn't have the room for the rear loading.
Or front loading, actually, I would think that.
I mean, that,
There are several developments that we've looked at, particularly along the Beltline in Atlanta, that are cottages that have rear entry because they're along the Beltline. These are things that you all have said you wanted, so we're mirroring those ordinances.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Given that, did you guys have any other questions or comments on that item? And I know Ms. Reed had added some extra language so that when they are those rear loads, so that it adds some driveway dimensions, so for the trash trucks and stuff like that as well. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I think that was all on that item. Give me one moment here. Okay. Our next item is 24-188. It says to refer to the Planning Commission a proposed ordinance to amend subsections 2.02, 8.01, and 13.02 of the Unified Development Ordinance to provide clarification regarding data processing facilities or centers. Ms. Reed's going to explain this one to us as well.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. The item before you is to allow for staff to have a little assistance in defining where the, in fact, data centers are to go. The current code identifies what we use as NAICS codes, and NAICS codes assist us in identifying what the use will be. We have a use table, and the use table gives a NAICS code. That code is what we use. We go onto the website that they have to better define those particular uses to help us declare where those particular uses are in zoning classification. For data centers in the past, we have seen that data centers, if you look at the use table example that I had given, it clarifies that it allows for a use that would be similar to web design or programming, computer programming, things of that nature. It's more defined to be used in your commercial districts, which is proper and correct. However, the data centers, as they're calling it, or we're calling it in our code, data processing, it's allowed in industrial, which is correct. However, what's confusing for the applicant is when we're telling them that they are not to have a data center in general commercial or in residential commercial, they're confused because the classification looks that way per our table. So I'm cleaning up the table to be a little bit more specific as to where data centers can and cannot go. One thing in particular that I'm doing is ensuring that the NAICS code is correct, of course. I'm also identifying, this is starting with section 202, which is on page 5. I'm starting with identifying the correct NAICS code. NAICS code has updated their code for more so computer processing and programming. And then the second thing I'm doing is adding the words facility and center. That gives us a definite identification as to where these centers will be going because that language was missing in our text. Then further, a few months back, you may have recalled, we had mentioned that we wanted to have conversations about parking for data centers. And it just recently came up last month, or earlier this month, about data centers needing to have parking corrections. Because you're having a lot of variances, and there is one who's saying they want to come before you again for a variance. So to prevent that, we're looking to change our codes to allow for the code to make sense for the actual use of the data center and parking. So the way that we're looking, we've researched a number of municipalities to see how they're doing their parking. One way that they're doing it is identifying parking to be one space for their highest load of working shifts. For example, if there's 3 shifts and one has 120 employees, that's the highest shift, that's the kind of the parking space we'll be looking for. So in the beginning of construction, they'll give us a proposal. These are the shifts that we're planning to have. We're planning to have 200 employees as our highest shift, and then we'll look for 200 spaces. There's no need for us to have excessive amount of parking for data centers. There's not that many employees inside that large building. So we're looking to change that. Lastly, which is something that is very important for this particular zoning change, is the definition of a data center. And that helps staff when they're coming into the door asking for this use. We're able to define it a lot better, and as you're seeing, it's attached here in the report. So we're asking for your support to move this forward to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for explaining that to us in a way that I know I can at least understand it. Thank you. Council, did you guys have questions? Yes, Mr. Estes?
Not a question so much as a comment. I mean, I have lived this confusion over the NAICS codes and the definitions multiple times in my ward. So I am all in on this to streamline that process, because we have had arguments between staff and developers. Well, no, we qualify for NAICS code 543, and the developer saying, no, we're on this. And it just adds to the headaches for everybody involved and the time involved. So I think this is fantastic. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, Mr.
Madam Chair, I have a question about the definitions, too. When you, under the defined terms, it says data processing facility or center, physical location for preparing, storing, and manipulating information with one or more computers and/or peripheral equipment. I'm wondering, and you may have gotten this from some national standard, that just sounds awfully broad. I mean, right now, my office would be considered a data center because I have a computer. I'm wondering if that should maybe say servers or networked server system. I mean, maybe this is for IT to answer the question, but I'm wondering about that
So,
definition.
Most definitely, we can take a look at furthering it. It will go to the Planning Commission, then back to you again. So we have enough time, if you're wanting for this to move forward to the Planning Commission, we have enough time to change the definition.
Okay, yeah, I think we just might want to be careful about that, because like I said, that's a bit broad, and it can be, any office that has a computer and could qualify.
Right. So this is the standard. I will say this example was a definition that we have used from another jurisdiction. So we're just kind of not reinventing the wheel, but definitely using what has already been used.
Thank you.
Perfect,
Thank you.
thank you. Were there any other questions or comments? Nope, okay. Thank you, Ms. Reed.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You guys, we do have one more item, and that is item 24-189, to adopt a resolution and authorize staff to submit the adopted resolution to Georgia Department of Community Affairs for approval regarding required plumbing code updates. And Ms. Reed is going to explain this one to us.
Yes, ma'am. So as most, if not all municipalities are doing, we adopt what the state codes are. And it makes it simple for us to be able to utilize their practices, their standards for us in construction. And we've adopted to use the state's plumbing code. And so as they update their codes, we are to update our code to ensure that it's reflective. And so the state has updated their codes more so to touch on things as to what type of kitchen faucet can a development have, to what level can a landscape irrigation system have, which is a sprinkler, what level can water flow be. Those different standards have been changed at state level. And so tonight's resolution is you giving me clearance to provide to the state for their review those code changes. We are not, and I've attached it, but we are not to change any language. The state has told us these are our codes. If you are to adopt, you are to adopt it verbatim. So basically, I'm providing back to them a resolution of your support to have these items changed in our codes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that explanation. Did you guys have questions about that item? No. That being said, I say we take that up on. I'm sorry?
This is kind of housekeeping stuff, basically.
You're not wrong. Okay. Well, let's take that one up on Monday. And Madam Mayor, that is all that we have this evening for planning and development.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff. Thank you, Ms. Reed, and to our applicants. We'll move on then to the next committee, which is Public Improvement and Beautification Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Nicole Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do not have any business this evening for public improvement and beautification.
Thank you, ma'am. Public Relations Committee, chaired by Councilmember Samuel Davis.
No items at this time, thank you.
You're welcome, Councilman Davis. Public Safety Committee, I think the Vice Chair, is it you, Coach Watts?
Yes,
Coach
ma'am.
Watts, please take this committee for me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
We have one item tonight. Item A, consider a request for the alcoholic beverage licenses for the on-premise sale and consumption of wine and malt beverages and spirituous liquor at the following establishment. Proposed licensee, Liv Taylor LLC, DBA Miracle Lounge Restaurant, location 12377 Veterans Memorial Highway. Proposed agent outlet manager, Leighton Taylor. The required fees have been paid into the finance department. And is Mr. Taylor here? Would you like to come forward, sir? And just give us your name and address for the record, and tell us what you have.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Leighton Taylor, representing Miracle Lounge at 12377 Veterans Memorial Highway in Douglasville.
Just tell us, briefly about your establishment. Y'all have already opened up or are about to? Or?
About to.
Okay, go ahead and give us some information about your
So,
establishment.
Miracle Lounge Restaurant is a hybrid restaurant that will be serving Jamaican, Mediterranean, and vegan options. Catering to the community, whether for live entertainment, comedy shows, live band, serving, basically trying to be a staple in the community. I'm not from Douglasville, but I have family members here, and, from what I've learned and heard, pretty much, it's a good community here.
Yes, sir, thank you. And just out of curiosity, is this your first restaurant, or do you have others in other?
My first here in Georgia, my
First.
other restaurant. I moved here from Boston 7 years ago.
Okay, all right. Does anyone on council have any? Yes, Councilman Davis.
Yes, sir, welcome to Douglasville. Douglasville is a good place to be. How will you go about training your employees, and what were the hours of operation?
The hours of operation will be on Monday to Wednesday, 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Thursday and Friday, 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. And on Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Sundays, 11 a.m. to 12 a.m.
And how you go about training your employees on alcohol and tobacco?
Pretty much, we have a management company that will come in to train the HR department, that will come in to train, all the employees.
Okay, and do you know the percentage-wise?
Yes,
Alcohol and food?
51%, 41%.
Pardon me?
51% alcohol, 41% food.
51, okay, and last call is 1:45 and out at 2.
Repeat that?
Last call, 1:45?
Yes, sir.
Right.
I was told 1:30, but
Okay, 1:30, yeah,
you're
it's
giving me
better.
an extra.
Yeah, and everything, yeah, 1:30, and then everything is out by 2 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
And we do have a noise ordinance. Do you have the upstairs? This is the old Red Velvet building, right?
Correct.
Okay, and we do have a noise ordinance.
Okay. I
So
think
make
everything would be more so inside when it gets to a certain time. I don't think we'll be playing any music after 10 outside. Everything will be inside.
Okay, make sure you get your package from Ms. Reed, so with all the particulars and everything.
Okay.
And the chief can give you a briefing if you need anything.
What that
Chief
order-
Sparks.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Mr. Taylor, you may have said this as you were explaining some things. When did you say your establishment will open?
Hopefully, Father's Day weekend, that's Saturday and Sunday. It's kind of weird time. My father passed away, so during
Yes,
that time, so.
Okay. Well, like Councilman Davis said, welcome to Douglasville, and we hope you do well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Yes,
that.
sir. Anything else before? Okay. Well, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, we'll have a public hearing on this item on Monday and allow folks to come forward to speak on behalf or against the
Okay.
application. But thank you
Thank
for coming to Douglasville. Madam Mayor, that's all I had tonight in public safety.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair, and Mr. Taylor for coming and giving us the information. You're welcome. We'll move on then to the next committee, which is yours as well, Recreation, Culture, and Tourism Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Chris Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have one
welcome.
item tonight, authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement with the Douglasville Convention and Visitors Bureau, Inc., for services related to promotion of tourism, conventions, and trade shows. And Ms. Rosado will be our presenter tonight. Yes, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Samantha Rosado, 6700 Church Street. Before you is a routine agreement between the City of Douglasville and the Douglasville Convention and Visitors Bureau, allowing us to expend the 3.5% of the 8% collected for hotel motel tax. Of the 8% that the city collects, 1.5% of that is used for tourism product development. 3.5%, which is what the agreement is for tourism conventions and trade shows, so it allows us to do our marketing efforts, and 3% of that goes to your general fund.
Thank you. And this is the same agreement we've had year in and year out? Nothing's changed as far as percentages or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions or comments from, yes, Madam Mayor?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Rosado, for the report. Is the amphitheater, Town Green, included in this package, or for
Is-
marketing and all of that, or it's just something separate?
The marketing is included, yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Any other
Mr. Chairman.
questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rosado, for all that y'all do for the city of Douglasville, and I'm going to have the honor of asking that this be the only item tonight so far, be placed on the consent agenda.
I think it's
And,
good.
Madam Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Rosado. We appreciate the report. We'll move on then to Technology Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Elena Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business under the Technology Committee this evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Transportation Committee, I ask the Vice Chair, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if you don't mind taking this item, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. We have
You're
one
welcome.
item to the Transportation Committee tonight, and that is to adopt a resolution to adopt the City of Douglasville Self-Evaluation and ADA Transition Plan as required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Mr. Marcus
Okay.
Thompson, please help us understand this issue.
Okay,
All right, good evening, Madam Mayor,
good evening.
and Council. Marcus Thompson, City Engineer,
Mhm.
6695 Church Street. Just to give you guys a brief recap, the self-evaluation and ADA transition plan was necessary by the Americans with Disability Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Basically, the plan represents compliance and our commitment to making Douglasville inclusive of all residents and visitors. This adoption signifies that our city has formally approved the plan and is committed to implementing a structured, transparent strategy to address specific issues and achieve set goals through a defined series of actions and strategies. Are there any questions or concerns you have?
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions or comments from council members? Yes, Mr.
I don't,
Jones.
it probably doesn't matter, but maybe it does. As you go through the slides on page 5, it shows a list of the council, and one of the items, one of the folks listed is not a councilman anymore, and our newest council person is not listed. I don't know if this is just based on the last time we looked at this, and it may be.
It says 2023.
Yes. That's when it was performed by AECOM and presented to you guys at that time, council.
Okay, that makes sense, that's what I thought. Didn't know if it had to be changed.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? It's hard to believe that the Americans with Disabilities Act has been here for over 30 years now.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman, the last time we talked about this, we had some folks we've had folks before us that had some issues with the amount of ADA spaces and things like that. Have we improved, are we in good shape as far as what we have here in the city?
I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for us to improve, and we are doing that with phase 1 of the sidewalk RFP that we're about to advertise. And yeah, I just feel like there's room for improvement.
If I remember correctly, I think there were some issues on the 92 bypass. I think there was some with the signal poles and some of the ramps. I think that was what was addressed specifically. Are you familiar with those? If you look, we have it in the record somewhere, you have to find, but yeah, that was brought up. There was a couple of the intersections along the 92 bypass. There was some issues with ability to reach signals and so forth like that. So you might want to just go back and double check that to make sure those specific items were addressed.
I'll make sure we look into that.
Any other questions? Madam Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you, City Engineer Thompson. It's going to take us some time, as the city manager has pointed out, when we first start talking about this on page 4, it gives like 4 points of a need and purpose assessment. So I just commend you that we are in the process. We have recognized the issues and we're trying to address them, but the expectation is that it's not going to be turnkey. It's going to take us time to implement all of these recommendations.
That's correct.
But thank you for bringing them to our attention.
Thank you.
Thank
Madam
you,
Mayor.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, and yeah, as with any normal maintenance within the infrastructure of the city, you're going to just simply, there might be things out there we just don't even know about right now that we have to discover. So it's just a matter of time and just having the right people out there looking and finding them and fixing them when we do find them. So, unless there's any objection, I would like to add this item so that Mr. Watts's item isn't too lonely on the consent agenda. All right.
Looks like it's okay.
Then that's all we have under the Transportation Committee at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Vice Chair. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, our city engineer. And you won't have a lone ranger on the consent agenda. So we'll move on then to other business. Is there any other business to come before council tonight from the elected officials? I don't see any. I know we do have a report at the end of the meeting under staff reports, but we'll move on to item 18, which is updates from our city staff. Our city attorney, Mr. Joel Dotson.
No business, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dotson. I will move on then to our chief of police, Dr. Gary Sparks.
We'll be having our graduation for youth against violence this Saturday. So if you want to come out and get a good meal, come on by. And we'll also be having our car show from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. So come out, get a little something to eat. We have some vendors out there, but hopefully we have some nice rides out there.
Yeah. Can we ride in the car? Was just a look-see?
Just walking, looking.
Okay.
What time?
Car enthusiast.
What time was the graduation?
And the graduation's at 10, correct, Chief?
Well, the graduation will start about 12:30.
Oh, the
We'll start
graduation.
eating about 12:15. So come on by. We have a speaker and.
Okay.
But it'll be a good time.
So the graduation will lead into the cart show. It's in simultaneous, the cart show's at 12 and graduation's at 12?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll be still having the Youth Against Violence. Youth Against Violence go until 2:00.
Okay,
Right, so the car show will be going on, and we'll be going back and forth, checking out, make sure everything is
It's okay.
going according to plan.
well, thank you so much, Chief, and congratulations on your graduation. What class number is this? Do you remember? Do you know?
18 years, we
It's
stopped counting about 15 years ago. Yes,
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for what you're doing for the community. We'll move on then to our city manager, Ms. Marcia Hampton.
I don't have anything, Madam Mayor.
What?
No, ma'am.
A miracle. Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Hampton. Now, we do have a staff report, and this committee is Recreation, Culture, and Tourism Committee. That's Councilmember Chris Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
One item under staff report regarding Douglasville Town Center green, or town green rental policy and procedures, and Ms. Rosado will handle this also.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council. Before you is an attachment with about 21 pages of the policies and procedures that we have put in place for the rental of the Greystone Amphitheater at the Douglasville Town Green. You'll see some information about the different portions at the bottom of page 7 and the top of page 8. So we've broken down the rentals into 5 separate areas. So if you want to rent the Greystone Amphitheater as a whole, just specifically the Town Green, maybe it's a yoga event or something of that nature, the bridge only, the bridge with the patio, and then the patio by itself. And the patio by itself is going to be the portion that's right above the concession area. The hours of those rentals, the bridge rentals, so anything that's going to be inside of the tower is going to be 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. With a breakdown before midnight. And then the Town Green or the amphitheaters rentals will be from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. The rental process that we have for the tower is going to mirror what the process that we have here at the conference center. So those rentals will include your tables and chairs for the event, and then customers will have to utilize a list of approved caterers through the RFQ process that we've been through. Requirements for the events for the Town Green and the amphitheater, one of the big emphasis that we put on is that the city must approve all the marketing collateral just to ensure the proper use of the facility name and that they're not utilizing either the city logo or the amphitheater logo, making it seem as it's the city's event. Any events that are going to go on the Town Green or on the amphitheater, we'll have to go through the special event permit application for outdoor events, and this gets all of the departments on boards to make sure that we have the staff adequate enough to have these events. And then the current restrictions, we will start running July 1st, but the current restrictions that we have in place are no events larger than 1,000 attendees, and then no concerts or ticketed events.
Okay, if, hopefully everybody had a chance to look at that before we got here tonight, but any questions for Ms. Rosado? Yes, Madam Mayor, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I have a burning question, Ms. Rosado.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is about concerts on the amphitheater, Greystone Amphitheater, and the availability or the permission or not to, for outside of the city of Douglasville holding concerts. Is that an option? It's not on this 22-page document.
Currently, no, ma'am. It's not something that we're putting in place. I think city manager has mentioned that with ongoing developments down there, we're trying to limit the number of attendees, and so we're sticking to any event that's less than 1,000 people, and then no concerts or ticketed events.
Okay, so that's what I have been trying to relay to certain people that are anxious to have a concert or a birthday celebration there with the concert including a concert person or a trio or something. So how are we going to monitor the equipment if they're renting the amphitheater and it's less than 1,000 people and they have a DJ? It just seems like there's a real fine line, and how will we police that?
Are you asking specifically about policing attendance or policing our equipment?
The equipment. So if it's under 1,000 people, which we've said in the document that you have prepared for us, but if the person comes in and they're renting the amphitheater and they've paid for the facility, what is stopping them from having a concert? If they have a DJ and somebody's out there and somebody's singing,
We control our equipment. They would have to
Okay.
pay our staff to manage that.
Okay, so staff will be the persons to tell them?
We're not turning over our equipment to anybody.
Okay. So they'll have to rent it from us?
Absolutely. No different than AV. There's an AV charge and fee here in the conference center. So it would be the same.
Sounds good. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councilman Davis.
Yes, did you look at other venues? Can you tell me some of the other venues that you got your information from?
We did several site visits in planning for this. So we've been to City of Woodstock, we've been to City of Stockbridge. I've been to the Sugar Bowl, I've been to Buford, and it seemed like City of Woodstock was probably most in line with our venue. So we did mirror a lot of what they have enacted, but kind of made it most applicable to some of the events and things that we already have here in place at the City of Douglasville.
Yeah, Stockbridge are more of a high end than we are. And did you look at Rome Ridge Fest Amphitheater, or the Villa Rica?
I did look at Villa Rica, yes, sir. I did not go to Rome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. Any other questions or comments? So I'm assuming, Ms. Rosado, that our pricing is comparable with similar venues in other similar-type towns as far as...
A lot of the amphitheaters that were looked at and that are in the region of what is comparable to us, they do a portion of ticketed sales, and that's how they make some of their revenue. Since we're not going through ticketed sales, we had to offset the cost to ensure that, we had staff and to maintain the building. But yes, they are very comparable. And when we were looking at any of the rental spaces in the tower, we looked at the capacity of that compared to the capacity of the conference center to make sure that we stay in line with what we already offer.
Well, I guess I'll just go ahead and ask maybe a stupid question. So 500, a group of 500 rents the amphitheater area. They can use the stage, but they can't use our equipment. They got to have their own. If they have something and all of a sudden we've got 2,000 people there because word gets out, whatever, just...
It's going to be like no other, it's going to be like every other special event that we have. If they rent O'Neill Plaza and it gets to be out of control, there's an aspect of law enforcement that's there. We get to clear out the event. So this just happens to be another venue.
Gotcha.
So no different than if we were in Hunter Park or Jesse Davis Park and they had the same. So we're not operating any different from a standpoint of crowd control. As far as our equipment, we're paying our production company to manage that like we do with the other events. The other thing that is not necessarily being said in the rules and regs is that not only are we trying to control the limit, but again, we are trying to balance this as a park. If we end up having so many events, then you remove an opportunity for people to enjoy the facility as a park. Because not only is Ms. Rosado through tourism handling events, so is Mr. Bass from a standpoint of the parks. There's probably an event, at least almost every weekend, that we're doing internally. So there's not going to be a ton of opportunity for private rental. It's just not, especially if we're going to manage it as a park.
So if somebody rents the amphitheater, 500 people could still come and use the park, or are they going to be closed out?
Samantha will work through that. It's not going to be like O'Neill Plaza, but you can talk to them about what they would have to require in order to have that.
So there are a lot of things that are addressed, especially with when crowd control happens. So through the special event permit process, it will go through Shayla's team, it'll go through PD, it'll go through public services. And so that's one way that we're going to be able to control the crowd sizes, because they will say how many of their men or women that they need on the ground. And so it does say in the agreement, well, it will say in the agreement, it says it in the policies, that City of Douglasville can shut an event down should you break any of the policies and procedures. So that was clearly defined in there. Depending on what the capacity of the event is, if they are renting the town green, or if they're renting the Greystone Amphitheater, it could look like they are putting fencing, and that's not something that will be the cost of the City of Douglasville. Those will be at the cost of the client. Just like utilizing AV and other things will just be an added amenity that they'll have to provide.
So a private event could put up fencing, but it'd be on them to do that.
It would be, they would have to outline it on their application, and it would go under review from all of those departments to ensure that it's in the best interest of the city of Douglasville. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilman Davis, and then we'll
Yes.
come back to Madam Mayor.
The fencing that's there now, are we renting those? They belong to us?
We're renting it.
We renting?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Is that it, Mr. Davis?
yeah.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
So again, so if they do not, Ms. Rosado, if they do not have the fencing that they will pay for the private event, and it's open as a park, and, for example, someone's having a picnic, a family reunion or something, anyone can walk in because it's a park,
Yes, ma'am.
and they understand that?
Yes,
The folks that
ma'am.
are renting?
And that's what, the same language that we use when people rent the O'Neill Plazas, because we don't allow
Okay.
them to block it off. And so we just go ahead and let them know that it is a public area and people
Mm-hmm.
could walk through their ceremony. And so we would use the same language for that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there are no other questions or comments, this is not a item we're voting on Monday or anything. It was just a staff report. We'll move on. Thank you, Ms. Rosado, for your information.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, anything else, City Manager?
No, just want to Madam Clerk would like to verify if anyone else would like to put any items on the consent agenda before you adjourn the meeting.
Say that again?
Any items on the
Anything else?
consent agenda?
Like,
Oh,
for instance,
I
item
just,
D under planning and development might be one of the ones.
just the
No
recreation
offense,
and
Mayor Miller, but I
transportation.
was trying. I was just letting you have your time to talk.
She said she was going to put D on there. The chair was
I'm going to
looking.
have your mic turned off one of these days. Yes, if it's not I'm sorry, I think we talked so long about that first item that I just forgot. I'm sorry, you guys. But if you guys are okay with it, I would love to place any of this on the consent agenda items. Let's start with D. Adopt the resolution that was plumbing. Are you guys okay with that? Yep. Okay.
Yes.
C, refer to the planning commission, the proposed ordinance, that was
For the
on
data
the
centers.
data facilities. Are you guys okay with that going on consent?
Yes,
What about
ma'am.
B, the garages on the
think we might wanna-
cottages?
I think we might want to discuss that one a little more.
Okay, Tamara. You can just,
All right,
so we're gonna talk about it again later anyways.
sure.
Look at that. So B, C, D for me, please. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Being efficient, and as the chief prayed already, it's
The problem is
harmony.
we
It's
agree on-
harmony.
We agree on too many things. We're just looking for conflicts. somewhere.
She blamed you for her not putting them on a consent agenda there, Councilman.
Somehow that's my fault.
I like that.
Oh,
I like that.
Okay, thank you so much, our city clerk. You have anything else, city manager or Ms. Acker? Thank you. All right, now if you have sustained the meeting and you understand where we are with all of the laughter, we are at comments from citizens and delegates report. If you'd like to come to us and you have comments, any business germane to the city of Douglasville, you're welcome to come to the podium, and you can talk to myself and council members. You have 5 minutes, any citizens. No takers? If we don't have any other business then to come before council tonight, this meeting is adjourned.